Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards and welcome back to another video. Okay, so let's get started. So the multi-row card is a visual that I've used a few times, but it's not one of my favourites. It's not one of my sort of popular ones. I tend to stick to a single card. But I'm going to show you three ideas here that I think it might be useful and I have used it in the past. So first of all, let's just go and walk through the creation of one. So I'm going to go in and it's this icon here. So let's take one up into here. And I'm just going to go and create one under here. We'll move that one off to the side for just now. So as we can see, in terms of fields, there's just one field well, and we've got a list of fields. Now, the type of fields you put into this card will impact how it actually looks, and we'll come to that in a second, or will impact how it's configured. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go and talk you through a few key points. So first of all, it's really quick to put together. Okay, you just drag and drop, and pretty much you've got a card that looks pretty good, and it's easy to configure. The second is that I would use it with probably a list of categories that are limited to 5 or 6. Okay, it does get quite tall quite quickly. You can reduce the font size obviously, but I think that's probably going to be at the boundaries of where this is going to be useful. So just make sure you know the number of categories, the number of values in your category that you're pulling into this card, and that it's not too big. If it's 1 or 2, then you might just use a card. The second one is, and this is a limitation in my mind, is that there's no conditional formatting of the actual values. Okay, so if I go and we'll just deal with this one here. There's no point in creating a new one if I've got one that's here. If I go in to the data label, we can see there's no option here. There's no FX button here that allows us to add conditional formatting to this colour of this label here. So that's a bit of a major downfall in my eyes. If you can see, just as a comparison, if I go and open up the normal card, and let's just add in a value here, it doesn't really matter which one it is. Go to data label, we can add some conditional formatting here, and that makes a massive difference. That allows us to basically, as it says, conditionally format that value based on targets and based on thresholds. So that's a bit of a limitation for sure. And finally, where I'd find it useful is actually adding it at the side of report. So if we were to move it over to the right hand side, or even the left hand side here, where space is a little bit limited and you don't want to use a chart. And if I turn this into a chart, you can see that this would be the one I'd be using for horizontal, for categories that have got a description rather than something like a date or something that's like a priority or the number. This is easier to read. However, you've got to pull that open a bit to be able to get these displayed. So it might be useful in situations, and I've used it in situations where you just want to display this value here, and space is limited. Okay, so a little bit of an overview of some of the pros and cons and ideas for when you would use this multi-row card. So the next thing is how to set up the field wells. So we can see here, this one here, if I just get rid of these, there's only one field well, and I'm going to go and add in, to begin with, a category, or a value first of all, which is going to be backlog count. And we can see it's just going to give us a backlog count here. Okay. Now the next thing we can add in is we can add in the category. So you've got a category from here, and I'm going to use the description, work order description, this one here that I've created before. So I'm going to add that in. It doesn't really matter where you add it, but just in terms of seeing it here, we've got safety. Now what it's done is it's taken these values, all of the values that are in that are available within this work order description, and there's 4 values available here. It's the criticality of the work assigned to a work order, and it split those down and allocated the number of backlog count, so the measure, it's allocated the measure to each one of these automatically, and that's why it's a multi-row card. Okay, that's a multi-row aspect of it. It's going to break it down by whatever category you choose there. Now you can use multiple categories as well, but it just kind of gets a little bit busy and manic. If I move it out, we can see that that's not going to be any useful. So it's basically split by safety and work type, or work type then safety. So yeah, I would keep it to one value for sure. Now if we do put in one that's got a number of different options here, we can see it gets quite big. That's probably acceptable, this work type here, but certainly something around about 4 or 5 is where I think it works best. So let's change it back to this work criticality description. Okay, and then we'll just move it in here. Right, okay, so that's the first option here. So simple, multiple categories, a single measure. Well, I've got this one here, and this applies to all the different options, configuration options. I'll just go through some of the options for actually formatting this card here. So we've got our general options at the top, this usual sort of stuff here, just the X and Y position and the size, if you want to be more accurate with that. We've got the data labels. Nothing new here. You can change the colour of this label here. So again, really straightforward. This category, so you can actually switch that on or off, and that just shows the category underneath. Now, if it's just one value that you've used, one measure that you've used, this is actually probably quite pointless because it's just repeating it. So we want to avoid repeatability whenever possible. So we'll switch the category off for just now. However, there is a scenario, I can't remember if it's the second or third one, where we will use that category option. Next one is the card title. So just make sure that you've got a good title, particularly if you're not going to use the category there, because you want to be able to say that this is work orders. If it was planned hours, you want to have that unit of measure in the title there, if you're not going to have it in each of the different rows, just so it's crystal clear what the actual what the unit of measure is there. The next one down is going to be the card itself. So there's a few options here about how you want to lay out these lines and this bars at the side. So first of all, we've got the outline. Now I've got bottom only, and that's just got a little faded line along the bottom here, which I think is actually quite nice. It just helps to kind of subconsciously draw the eye, or delineate, or basically break up the different category value, the category measure combinations. So I think that's really good. You can play about with this, and you can put it at the top. I quite like it at the bottom because it kind of rounds it off at the bottom here. You can put it at the top and the bottom. That's just a bit busy. So I think the bottom for me, you can create a frame if you want right around it. I think the bottom for me is quite good because your eye's kind of drawn to rounding off the figure, and it kind of underlines this figure as well. So I use it at the bottom. You can change the weight, but actually the standard one or two is pretty good. Next option here is to show this bar, and again, I quite like that bar actually at the side. I think particularly if you're using it at the side here, it just starts to kind of let you see and frame up these values here. So yeah, that's something I really like about this card, is the bar at the side. Again, using a light grey colour just to keep it nice and subtle. And you can change the background. Now this padding is the padding between the actual value category combinations. So if I increase this, you can see that that's increasing the value between the two of those. Again, 10 was the standard, 10 was the actual the default, and it worked okay. I was quite happy with that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. You can change the background if you want, and that is the card option. Now the next one down is the title, which is fine, the background, so everything else is pretty much the same as most other standard visuals. So there's still a lot of configuration options here. Oddly enough, what you can do is you can actually add conditional formatting to the title, or you can add conditional formatting to the background, or even the border if you've got a border on, which I find bizarre because if you've got conditional formatting, how do you know which one of these is actually gone over the value? And normally you'd have conditional formatting to turn red or to turn a different colour if it's above or below a certain value. So there's probably some examples where you can use it, but I think it'll be much more useful when you can conditionally format each one of these. So that's the first one there. The first option where you've got just a value, a category, we'll call it, and a value that goes along with that. The next one we've got, and I'll just quickly talk you through some other options here. So this one here kind of clusters a number of measures together for a particular category value. So if I go in and look at this one here, so a few examples here. In this one, we've actually got all of these are related to backlog. Okay, so what we want to be able to do is quickly draw together 4 different values related to safety critical backlog, all in a pretty compact area. So we've got the number of work orders, we've got the percentage. Now what I've done here is I'll just quickly show you where I've done this. I've actually, yeah, so if you actually go, the category value has been switched on here because I think that's quite useful in each one of these. So without the category value, there's no real idea of being able to put the units. You just have to put 4 different units of measure in the top here, and it's going to be a bit confusing. So what I've done here is I've switched the category values on, and I think it works okay for the work orders and for the hours because they're kind of self-contained. We're just going to have to live with a little bit of repeatability, but I think it's okay because you're looking at each one of these in kind of isolation as a chunk of data there. However, we don't need to see these backlog counts and backlog hour counts. So what I've done there, I've used this example, I've done this trick before, is I've just put a dash in here. And I think that just makes it a little bit easier. And you might even, in here, go and change this description here and then put in percent. So you can see that percent here. I'll even put brackets. I'll link to the video below where you can actually add a measure that's got brackets that just gives it a little bit more of a differentiation between the value and the actual percentage. So there's a few options here that you can play about with the category. I'll just turn it back to what I had before. So this one here, we've got the total, and then this is a percentage of the total. And then in terms of work orders, and then in terms of hours, this is a percentage of the total. So we've clustered it together. So in this example here, I've got one value here, which is work order criticality description, and I've just added multiple different measures in here. Okay. So if I open this up, back up, we can see it goes on to rows, but they're a lot more difficult to kind of look at. And once you kind of get it compacted down, I think it's probably getting it to that level there is the one where they're kind of clustered together, so your eye doesn't need to travel too far to the left or to the right. As soon as you move it out, in terms of readability, your eye's having to kind of travel along here. It's not too bad, but it's taking up quite a lot of space. But if you've got it together, you can see you can make it quite small. Still a little bit of padding here, but it's 26 work orders and that's 3%. 393 work orders, that's 50% of the total. So that's pretty good. Okay, so that's the second one. Again, you don't want to have too many of these, probably 4 or 5, because they're actually physically taking up quite a lot of space. Obviously, you can reduce the size of the font and squeeze in probably up to 6 or 7 into there. Consider using the little dash here. So that's the second example here. So multiple categories for multiple measures. And then the third example, the third idea, is where we've got something that you want to put along the top here. Now, what will happen is this only works if you've got no category value, okay, but you add multiple measures. Okay, so if you can see here, I've actually got a measure that I'm using, and I'm using this calculate statement really just to filter in on the backlog count for the work criticality equal to environment. Okay, so each one of these is a different measure. So rather than put the work criticality in as the sort of category and then letting the card split that by rows, in this example here I've just added in multiple measures. Now you could use multiple cards, but what it does is it kind of keeps it all together, and it means you've got this bar at the side and the bar along the bottom, so it's quite quick to put together. The big downfall obviously being that you can't add conditional formatting, but if that's not important for you and you just want to put some measures together, then this is another example where you can use it. You can, if you squeeze it together, have it again as a tall one as well, now that it's sitting along the side here. But if you want to get it along the bottom or along the top of your report, you do need to use this option here. Okay. So that just allows you to put it along the top, and then obviously when you switch on the category, you see the category label for each one of these, and you can label each one individually, and it appears underneath the value rather than on top of it. 26 safety critical work orders, 56 environmental production routine. So just changes how you read it a little bit. But another option if you want to pull this together just with some measures. So multiple measures, no categories. Useful if you want to display at the top or the bottom just to round off a report or to kind of put it as a header for the report. It does require you to create a measure, obviously, for each one of these. You can use the examples here that I've got. This file will be in the resources section of the website. And this one allows you to use it horizontally or vertically. So you've got the option here. This other one here doesn't really have the option to use it vertically. You can use it horizontally, but you can't use it vertically. It puts it into these rows here and spreads it across quite a lot of real estate. Okay, so still like a conditional formatting, but it is quite quick and easy to set up, and you do get these for free that kind of quite nicely kind of frame up the values. Okay, so that's about it for the multi-row card. Not a lot to talk about. Enough to fill 16 or 17 minutes worth of video though. So I'm going to draw it to a close just now. Hopefully you found it useful. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, that would be much appreciated. Thanks. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest releases, I release a video around about every week. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but around about every week. Then click the subscribe button and you'll be kept up to date and notified whenever I release a new video. Okay, so thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.